Hi everyone, my name is Tatiana and I am here hosting the Visionaries Room at the UpConvergence Global Summit. And today I have the delight, the pleasure, the honor of interviewing Gary LaChance. Gary is the co-founder and spiritual advisor to the Decentralized Dance Party, or DDP. This is a global party movement that started 11 years ago, and him and his team have taken these parties around the world and united hundreds of thousands of people in joyful, glorious, beautiful displays of celebration. And to give you an idea of how epic this is, we are going to cut to a clip right now. So these parties are wild, glorious, uninhibited, and there is a philosophy, a way of life, a burgeoning revolution that is at the core of this movement. And we're going to dive into all of that here today with Gary, and in preparation for Peace Weekend and also the party he is about to launch today, perhaps his biggest party yet. So let's dive in. Welcome to this superhero of a man, Gary. Welcome. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I think to dive into this subject matter, maybe the first thing to do is sort of define, for those people who haven't experienced this, exactly what a DDP is and how it works.
Well, a DDP is many things, but the way it began 11 years ago was we had an idea to get an FM radio transmitter in a backpack and use it to beam music out to hundreds of vintage boom boxes. What you create there is a decentralized sound system where there's no central audio source and no central location. The way those parties worked was we would have a starting point, lend the boom boxes out to hundreds or thousands of people, and then lead them through the city in a roaming party adventure that could go anywhere for as long as we wanted, with no limitations. We did those all over the world. When the pandemic struck, started doing virtual parties through Zoom calls, and we quickly realized that everyone on the Zoom call could be a node out in the world using these giant soundbox speakers or any Bluetooth speaker, which is the loudest portable speaker in the world. And this way we could create an even more decentralized global dance party and hopefully unite the world in celebration.
And I think that maybe some discussion is required around your attire, because that has been quite a big part of your celebrations, is just this like air of absurdity and ridiculousness. And I feel like you even have a clothing line, which I am currently wearing a part of.
Nice.
So party bands. So maybe you can just share a little bit about the kind of like culture you're creating of this sort of silliness.
Yeah, this whole thing was started by best friend Tom and I, throughout our lives, we'd always gravitated towards silly, outrageous, hilarious, ridiculous clothing, because why wouldn't you? If you have the option to have a normal time or a ridiculous fun time, you might as well be wearing a costume.
You might as well.
So yeah, we were always just like finding the funniest stuff. Anytime we went out to a party or anything at all, just ridiculous, hilarious things. Lots of stuff from our childhood. Lots of neon, Reebok pumps. And yeah, many years ago, we found some pairs of these crazy tiger shoulder pads at this secondhand store and just started wearing them. And then as the DDP developed, we adorned them with various patches and things. It's all about having the best time and losing your inhibitions, dissolving the ego, which I believe partying is all about. So all about good times and expressing that.
I feel like I always had a theory. I mean, I have a theory that you're a superhero, come from like some alternative space-time dimension to sort of bring peace on Earth, and this whole get-up really matches my vision of that. So I think it would be awesome to kind of dive into the philosophy that's at the core of this movement you're building, because from my explorations of the work that you're doing, it's like so much greater than just a party. This is a, you know, as I said before, a way of life. And so maybe you like dive into that. You have one distinction, which is like partying versus capital P partying. And I feel like that deserves some explanation.
So I do believe that capital P partying, properly applied, is a force more powerful than all others combined. And yeah, starting out doing these parties, it was just this wild, crazy, drunken misadventure. And then as it evolved through the first 6 months, it grew from 20 people to 20,000 during the Olympics. Then during the Olympics, it was just everyone from every background, walk of life, age, race, didn't matter. We were noticing that, wow, this really, no matter who you were, this crazy like joy mob could sweep everyone up, had this amazing, powerful, unifying effect between perfect strangers. That was where my brain really started philosophizing and thinking more deeply. And we did a tour across Canada and kept seeing this everywhere we went, kept thinking upon it. And then that was when created the Party Manifesto, which is also known as the 7 Commandments of Successful Partying. So these elements include costumery, music, behavior, location, props. Your party experience will be elevated if you incorporate potted plants or other props. And all these things are basically elements for dissolving the ego, releasing you from your inhibitions. And usually that is the function of drugs or alcohol. But if you create a really amazing, epic party experience, people will be so excited and overwhelmed by that alone that they'll lose their inhibitions through partying. That is what we call a capital P party experience. Just something that's so amazing and fun and awesome that it gets people in this zone where they lose their socially conditioned identities and hang-ups and are just like purely expressing and existing and sharing what I believe to be a unique form of love. So capital P partying is a way to broker loving connections instantly between total strangers, no matter who they are. And that's one of the catchphrases on the manifesto is forgetting who you are while remembering what you are.
Yeah, and your plan is to kind of bring this sort of unifying force to as many parts of the world as you can, right? You want to take it into even war-torn countries and places of unrest and really use this capital P partying force field to actually create peace.
Yeah, force field is a great term for that, which I don't think anyone has mentioned before. But yeah, as we went along and did all these parties and not having any incidents of violence, and we've done like almost 100 of these all over the world, all kinds of crazy spots, and we still haven't had a single fine or ticket from the police. Usually they'll come across us and we'll explain what's happening and just get a impromptu escort through the city. So it's amazing, like the power to wage peace through these things. And I actually ended up in the middle of the hockey riot here in Vancouver, and after seeing that, I was like, wow, like there's this hive mind, there's this groupthink phenomenon that can happen, like this force field for destruction that happens in a riot, and you don't realize it in the DDP until you've seen the opposite. But this is like a force field for love and joy, and I think a super powerful form of social alchemy. And a really inspiring story is about the Christmas truce in World War I. Yeah, basically like the Germans and the British were in the trenches killing each other in this horrible situation, and then I think it was on Christmas Day, the Germans had like a lit up tree and they started singing back and forth, and then eventually this party broke out like up and down the lines where people, like these mortal enemies, instantly could put that aside and just exist as not Germans or British, but just human beings getting along. And it probably would have spread and ended the war, I would maybe believe, but the centralized powers, the generals, ordered them back into the trenches and said, if you try that again, we're going to kill you. So I think partying has that kind of power. There's other weird random stories too. Like there was one, I don't think there's any footage of it, but it was in Northern Ireland. The British were dealing with some kind of a riot, and all the Irish youths were out throwing rocks at them, and then they put ice cream song music through the truck, and everyone just started laughing, and it just faded away. And all kinds of things. Like in the Philippines prisons, they started doing like these synchronized dance parties with all the prisoners, and like everyone just started getting along. So
it's almost like you can't sustain an aggressive demeanor when like a ridiculous song is playing in the background. Like it's like you can't take your own self seriously enough. Or, if I was to see you coming at me while I'm in like an aggressive state of mind, it'd be very hard to keep that.
Yeah, a good quote is, you can't party angry.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, just random of my own story. I'm just sort of making a connection, but I was in Mexico, and some very like my friend and I were approached from like some like very aggressive looking men, and we just started singing this like ridiculous song, and it just diffused the whole situation. Like they just didn't even know what to do with that,
Oh yeah.
So
it's Jedi mind tricks.
It's a Jedi mind trick. Definitely.
Same with the banana suits.
Yeah. No wonder the police can't really have a reaction to that. I mean, there's just nothing inherently threatening with a person running around in a banana suit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can get away with pretty much anything in a banana suit. We have proven that. But yeah, it's amazing. Like when we were starting out, we're like, man, like how do we like hide the transmitter, and we can't tell the cops who's in charge. Like we're gonna have to sneak around. But yeah, it first happened in the Olympics, the big crowds where the police were like, we just want to know who's in charge and where you're going so we can keep things safe. And we were like, whoa, that's crazy. But then, yeah, over and over and over, every city we've gone to, like, it's been just amazing how we do all kinds of tricks, too. Like, if they show up in the middle of a party, we'll be like, hey, the police are here to party with us. Then everyone's like, yeah, and the police are getting cheered, and they're like, we've never been cheered before. What is going on? But when you have this mic, and this is another big thing, you have the mic, you can speak through all the boom boxes, so it's like this completely unique type of crowd control that most people don't know exists. Like, we've had this weird technology that we invented that no one is even aware of, and still digitally, like, I haven't seen a good version of this, but it's like instant, perfectly synchronized communication to all the boom boxes. So yeah, you can control the crowd very well, as long as you stay calm and say the right things. So.
Right. Yeah, well, that idea of the inclusivity of even, inviting the police to party with you, I guess, is one of your sort of tenets. It's like, radical inclusivity of all people. And I want to dive into another subject with you, another kind of component, I guess, or maybe it's the core of your philosophy, and that is the decentralization open source movements. And I want to read a quote from you. You have said, "To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." So how do you see, I love that quote, by the way. So how do you see decentralization, open source, crypto, these movements as kind of the answer to kind of going around the existing paradigm and creating something entirely new?
First, I cannot take credit for that quote. That's Buckminster Fuller.
Oh, okay.
Often quoted by the DDP and a lot of my friends in the open source movement. I've been a filmmaker for many years, and I was always very annoyed that I couldn't just use music freely to create world-changing movies and skits and things. So I got into the open source movement way back in the day when the Wikipedia first came out. I was super fascinated by it and excited by it. And then, I still remember I had this landscaping job a long time ago. And as I was trimming a hedge, I had this realization that like everything in the world could be open source, could be this open commons repository for especially anything that can be digitized. So with the Wikipedia, that's like the open sourcing of knowledge. And if you look at society, pretty much all our power structures are closed and centralized, which is the opposite of open source. So you see central banks, government, media, agriculture, every major institution is closed and centralized. And a lot of that relies on copyrights and patents where they own a thing and can capitalize on it, and it's not shared with everyone. And this made sense for a long time, I believe, to spur innovation. But now with the internet and the ability to infinitely replicate any bit of knowledge or any music or video or any idea and have it spread around the world, my philosophy is that, that's the key to building a new world that will maximize freedom, creation, and loving connection. So everything I've created in my own life, films, I've tried to just release it and say do whatever with it. And that's the philosophy behind the DDP as well, turning this into a movement that anyone can join and lead. And we've done our best to use decentralized fundraising, crowdfunding, and donations to keep it going. So it's never beholden to any corporate sponsors. And it's a longer exploration, but I've started doing this talk recently called Scaling Spirituality from Egosystems to Ecosystems. So you can also look at all these structures are based on ego, like control and selfishness in a lot of situations. But open source, like a good example is Bitcoin, which is an open decentralized monetary system. And the person or people who came together and made this, they just anonymously released it, shared it to the world for anyone to use. And this is like the most powerful, revolutionary, Nobel Prize worthy invention of like all time potentially. And they just gave it away. No ego. And that's the whole philosophy behind open source. Everything is creating and sharing with the world. And I think we have all this artificial scarcity and all this division and all this inefficiency and all these terrible, backwards, horrible situations in the world. And I think open and decentralized is the key to building a whole new one. So try to exemplify that as much as possible within the DDP. And yeah, it's amazing. It's turned so many people on to these ideas and ideals. And yeah, that's a big thing too, is the quote, if it's not fun, it's not sustainable. So there is this nascent decentralization movement in the world, but a lot of the times it can get caught up in these notions of selfishness and tribalism, which is collective ego. And our mission has been to keep it open and fun and silly and minimize the ego as decreed by the Doge.
I feel like he's kind of a centralized power figure somehow, though.
She.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I take that back. Yeah. No, that's very powerful. Very powerful. I guess maybe this is slightly off topic, but I guess just the one thing I don't quite get is how, for those of us who are artists who are trying to make a living or, with our art and releasing it into the world in the way that it is already actually being released now, but without compensation, seems to me to be the one kind of tricky part of this.
I believe it's unethical to work within these systems. So to me, that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter how many sacrifices or shortcuts or whatever are going to be involved to keep the integrity of the DDP. So, and everything I do, I want to try and make it as open and decentralized as possible. I think life is not about shortcuts. It's about integrity at all costs. So nothing else matters to me. Hopefully that inspires others.
That is inspiring. That's very inspiring. That actually is a perfect segue into where I kind of wanted to guide this interview, which was into sort of your personal journey with this movement. And I wonder if this is a moment to remove your glasses and unveil. But I know superheroes, you got to keep it cool over there. But I'm curious, oh boy, has this ever been seen before?
This is dissolving the ego.
Wow.
Or something.
So I'm very honored to have Gary's eyes.
Might have some bags under them. It's been a long life.
So I'm curious because I know that anyone who starts a movement, but knowing you personally as well, I just know how much work and life and love and sweat and blood has gone into the creation of this incredible vision. And so I wondered if you wanted to share sort of just what the challenges with that have been, or sort of quantify in some way how much of yourself you've given to this. If you can even put that into words, I'm not sure, but
yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was talking the other day with, I think it was Cassie. Shout out to Cassie, Chief Operating Officer within the DDP. She's like, I'm so impressed how you've devoted so much of your life to this thing. And I was like, yeah, it really seems impressive in a lot of ways, but it's really no different than someone who dedicates 10 or 20 years of their life to raising kids. So I made the decision that this was more in alignment with my soul and what I enjoy than having a family. So yeah, I don't want to be I'm this amazing person, but I've been dedicated to this instead of that. And yeah, I mean, it's been tons of sacrifices, but it's also been the most meaningful, rewarding thing I could imagine. And like people like yourself that resonate with what this thing is, even if they don't know all the details of the philosophy and stuff behind it. Like, it's just been this like divining rod for the most divine, beautiful, authentic people in the world, and that's like the most amazing, rewarding thing ever. So there's been a lot of sacrifices and a lot of
when you say
challenging situations. Like, I don't know, spending all my money on this, maxing out all my credit cards, going into debt, missing like all these summers and all this fun stuff because I'm just like glued to the computer, and all the stress and things. Like, I didn't even know what anxiety was till I hit 35, and then a lot of things related to the DDP eventually built up, and like were very overwhelming and challenging to deal with. And yeah, even right now, leading up to Peace Day, like, it's been like on the edge. And none of this, like, I could have a simple, enjoyable, fun, everyday life pretty easily, but this just feels like my calling. So,
well, like, so how
keeps
much
the fire lit.
Yeah. So how much, so we get an idea, because I'm sure I don't even know the half of it. You know, how much work goes into putting on these events? You know, like right now, I mean, I guess you're working all the time, or, you know, there's way more involved here than probably.
Yeah, like, I don't even really notice or think of it because I've been doing it so long, but yeah, it's basically like pretty much all my time. Like, since the pandemic started, it's basically all I've done for the last 6 months.
But I think even before the pandemic started, it was like all you'd done for the past 10 years or something.
Yeah, I was lucky. There was some time in there I got to go traveling and meeting Decentralites from across the globe. But yeah, definitely always working to some degree and filming everything.
What's been the most rewarding part of this journey?
Yeah, just connecting with people who really resonate with this thing, and just having the best times and most amazing adventures, and feeling like, yeah, this thing has, like, so many people have said that was the best night of my life after these parties, and like, that's pretty amazing to give someone the best night of their life and hear that over and over and over, and think that you're doing this thing, and hopefully it'll take on a life of its own at some point and just spread everywhere. And yeah, we talk about getting the Nobel Peace Prize for partying, and it's never been a joke. It's like, this is the coolest, funniest, funnest, most meaningful thing I could ever be involved in. And yeah, the magic's still there after 11 years, so it's all been good. And yeah, hopefully it's inspiration for other people to do that in their own lives, live their truth, not have kids if it doesn't feel right, and devote yourself to art and creation and connection and the things you feel in your heart and soul, not what you're conditioned to accept and submit to. I think that's how we build a new world. It's not about protesting or fighting or arguing, or just about, yeah, what's the quote? Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So I would advocate for that.
I would join you in that. That sounds delicious.
I think you've done a little bit of that.
A little bit.
Did we get to meet Tatiana at all in this interview?
Maybe we could. Yeah, hi.
Would you agree with all those things?
Yeah. Goodness. What the world needs is those people who are alive. I would absolutely agree with that. And I think that's probably the most powerful thing we can offer is our heart just on fire with what it loves. And I think that, that's a flame of inspiration for others, for sure. You've been a flame of inspiration for me. I mean, every time we're like tuning rods for each other. I think every time we come into contact with someone who's vibrating that frequency, it sort of like strengthens it in the other. And so we sort of mutually enforce and strengthen each other's calling and vocation when we're holding this kind of integrity. So yeah, 100% agree.
I was going to say something, but I forgot what it was. Oh, well.
Well, I guess, you've answered this in quite a few ways already, but I kind of wonder if you can give like a sentence or more, but just, how would you know that your vision had been completely realized? What would that look like?
Yeah, I remembered what I wanted to say. It was the whole scaling spirituality notion. Yeah, to me, this is just like pure, uninhibited self-expression based on love, not fear. To me, that is spirituality. So, not acting out of anger or insecurity, but just. And I mean, I'm lucky. Like, it's probably easier for me to say than most people. So I was lucky to have a good childhood that definitely helps you to live this way. But yeah, what was the question?
The question was, how would you know the vision was complete? What would it look like for the vision of the DDP to be completely brought to fruition? I mean, I get it. You're standing on the stage of the receiving your Nobel Peace Prize, but what else would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the only reason I want to be on a stage is because it would be so hilarious. Everyone would be so happy to see that.
They would. They really would.
Guys in their friggin' tiger pads getting the Peace Prize. Best day. I mean, there's the vision for the DDP, just like everyone out in the world spreading music and having these magical connections everywhere. I mean, we want to do simultaneous global parties. We want to activate people everywhere to create their own. We were working with Sparkleverse doing virtual Burning Man. I don't know if you saw it, but we realized, we've been collaborating with these guys, and they have these interactive party maps since the pandemic started. And they made this virtual Burning Man somehow with like no time and a tiny team. But we realized that this is like the beginning of this new social network based on love instead of closed and centralized social network that's based on profits and control, all the closed and centralized things. So yeah, just building all these new frameworks that are going to unite people in partying, expressing, connecting. This new, it's not new, but this scaling this form of spirituality and love. But also, we need to get into the decentralization of everything, I think. Like agriculture, 3D printing is like decentralization of production. So like 3D printed homes, 3D printed solar panels, like everything open source. You see Tesla, like Elon Musk, just like open sourced. I think all or most of the patents on Tesla, because he's just like, this is too important to hold on to while the whole world burns. So I just open sourced everything. And I love the quote too. There's nothing more powerful then an idea whose time has come, and I think it's time for this idea. So I just hope, I don't know, I've been like trying to preach this for like almost a decade. Like I was up on the main stage at Occupy Vancouver saying this exact philosophy to thousands of people, and like it's definitely disappointing to see people still focused and angry about the symptoms of the problems instead of the actual root of the problems, which, at least in my understanding of the world, is these closed and centralized systems and all these things and all these imposed identities that divide us and see us not as one, but these different subgroups. And I guess, yeah, on that note, I should say we were going to do a Canada Day party this year, just kind of like last minute. Tom suggested it, and I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. And then realized like the DDP has been an evolution, so we stuck these on back way back in the Olympics, and we did some Canada Day stuff back in the day. But as it's evolved, like to make this the most inclusive party possible, I realized like, yeah, like any symbol representing group identity is potentially divisive and destructive. So like, it's been amazing and awesome to grow up in Canada. Definitely, we're not anti-Canada. We're not anti we're not anti drinking alcohol or anything, but we're definitely pro individual self-expression, which is,
you're definitely pro that guy.
yeah. So this is the evolution I've been like,
yeah,
wanting to do. That's on some list somewhere, but
so maybe
there we go.
well, I just want to say one thing, which is that I think any pioneer is frustrated with the slow pace at which the mainstream moves forward with ideas that are so obvious to them. So I just applaud your efforts, and I think that part of the territory is when you're kind of ahead of your time is lugging the weight of collective consciousness behind you and trying to get it to speed up. So
yeah, luckily I don't get frustrated and angry. I'm just like, feel like I'm taking crazy pills and looking for people that are on the same wavelength, because man, there's a lot of silliness out there. But yeah, that is from the earlier thought too, like trying to create the most inclusive party possible without these group identities is yeah, I mean, that's my vision for not just the parties, not just this temporary autonomous zone, but I think that's like the goal is definitely to establish communities and all over the world, physical communities where it's just all about the love and the light and individual expression, and not anything that can divide us, because there's so many ways we can be divided, and that's what the centralized powers do. I don't think it's some great conspiracy, but it's just like classic divide and conquer. And once people are fearful or angry or whatever, it's easy to like bring out the Jedi mind tricks and keep everybody submitted in this lower than optimal state. At least that's how I see things.
yeah, no, I'm feeling you. So I think we should, I think it's time for you to tell us about your pandemic response, because you've completely innovated the DDP. Your technology has adapted with the times, and you have a really big party that's about to be thrown. That's going to be the closest you come to your global dance wave across the world, I think, right? Is that it? Maybe you can tell us about it.
Yeah, as long as my heart and brain hold up for the next 5 days, this will be the culmination of 11 years of hard work and craziness all coming together. So yeah, we've been doing these parties every single week throughout the pandemic for like 24 weeks in a row, where we're doing virtual Zoom parties and also blending in Soundbox and other speaker nodes throughout the world. And yeah, we've been working towards this World Peace Day, World Peace Weekend activation. And I was almost not going to do it this year, but then you got in touch and were like, hey, I'm aligned with Up Convergence World Peace Weekend giant global broadcast. And I was like, oh, I guess we gotta, the stars are aligning. So yeah, the idea is to do the best possible safe activation that we can. So we're gonna have a big group downtown Vancouver meeting at the art gallery at about 3 p.m. And I don't know, should I give away all the secrets of what we got planned?
Well, I mean, we'll leave some surprises for sure, but give us enough info so people want to show up and tell us how to show up.
It will be creating a magnificent monument to the human spirit in front of the art gallery that will bask in its magnificence for a little bit and then spread out all over the city. And we have a DDP app that if you hit the host a party button, you show up as like a live moving node on the map, a boombox anywhere in the world. So we'll have these spreading out across Vancouver and across the world, because this will be a global, simultaneous, all interlinked broadcast with two-way audio video between everybody. Through the pandemic, we discovered this technology to create this simultaneous global party. And it's just been very humble and simple, step by step. And this party, it's not going to be like the multi-million person simultaneous activation that is the dream, but yeah, we're hoping it'll be awesome enough that we can get the footage we need to create the DDP documentary that we've been working on for the last 7 years now, and create this thing and tell the whole DDP story and get the whole world on board with these ideas, and then it'll just start spreading autonomously all over the world with what I believe is the most integral piece of the puzzle, which is the right integrity and values and vision and philosophy underlying it. So just got to get those set in stone and have enough people resonating and understanding that it'll self-govern. And to me, that's how decentralization works. Like, you don't need to have these rigid force-based systems. You just have to have the right philosophy guiding it. And then it can be open and decentralized, and anyone who's a part of it, innovating, will keep it on the right track. And Burning Man's a really cool example of that, how it has the 10 principles, and you have these regional burns all over the world that propagate autonomously, but they don't devolve into things that they shouldn't be based on those original ideas. So yeah,
Well,
that's what we're trying to do. And we just launched the new website today, actually, theddp.com.
Yeah, so tell people how they can like really practically attend your party and get in touch with you, and then maybe, because we're coming to the end of the interview, just a final message or note you'd love to end us on.
Yeah, if you want to join the party, there are, I guess, 3 ways to join. You can just beam in from your home. So set up your space for the maximum party enjoyment. Ideally, you want the biggest screen possible, the loudest audio possible, lights, costumes, props, anything to get weird and silly and lose that pesky ego. And yeah, the other way to join would be, big shout out to Emily McGill, who's just weaving and organizing everything behind the scenes, keeping this on the rails the last couple weeks. She did an activation where they had the Zoom call was projected huge on the side of a building, and everyone had silent disco headphones. So they had this set up like right in the middle of the city late at night, where everyone could be a part of this and see and interact. So you can beam in as a node outside as well. Or if you're in Vancouver, or if you want to attempt it anywhere else, you could do a roaming
kind of DDP where you're still connected. And yeah, the idea is to just get this vision into people's heads that it's possible to create these simultaneous synchronized parties that can unite everybody. And showing, I guess that's another big part of this too, is we've been realizing, like, with this idea of trying to get people together in war zones or people that hate each other, or where it's impossible to actually meet each other within a virtual party. You could have, like, people. We've been talking to a few different friends about the Israel-Palestine situation, potentially having people on both sides of that conflict in these rooms, in these worlds, and actually, like, partying and interacting and getting to know each other. And yeah, this virtual stuff's really interesting as, like, a new way to connect with people where it's too dangerous or too far or too impossible to connect
Normally.
You guys have actually adapted in a way that's actually going to further your mission. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
That's the info for how to join, and that's going to be happening today, actually.
Yeah, if you go to the DDP, THEDDP.com, all the info is there. There's also a donate tab, or there will be soon, if you'd like to support this of the people, by the people, for the people mission. Need your support to keep going. And yeah, there's probably other things we're forgetting, but that's probably enough.
That sounds really good.
Should we talk about the Doge at all?
You know what? He's all over your chest, so maybe it's an important thing to mention. That can be your final message. What would you like to say about the Doge, Gary?
So, I won't tell the whole story, but the Doge, D-O-G-E, has inspired silliness and community and goodwill for the last decade all across the world independently. There's just something about this face, this all-knowing divine avatar, Buddha assuming its ultimate form, potentially, that keeps inspiring good times and goodwill across the world. And I think the Doge is the perfect divine avatar under which we can all unite, and also a female, which, if you take a good look at it, like, centralized existing society is this rigid control, hierarchical, patriarchal, whichever structure, and decentralization is this move to a more holistic, cooperative, compassionate, community-based world. So, perfect divine avatar for the decentralization movement, the transition from egosystems to ecosystems, the notion that silliness is next to godliness. And Doge spelled backwards is egod, or ego-d, ego-death, so it's all coming together.
Wow. There's a mind trip for you. So funny because the face is so innocent and pure, and yet the plan behind it is immense.
The Doge has a plan for us all. Doge consciousness.
Doge consciousness. Well, thank you
on the rise
so much, Gary. It's so fun to see you and to do this interview with you, and I look forward to dancing my face off at this Up Convergence, all the other people involved that are on your end.
Will you be joining us?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got my power bands on, man, and I've got my shades. Maybe we need to go out with our shades on. I will be there.
What about Mom?
My mom is always invited, and so is my grandpa. I've told them. They're ready to go.
Amazing. I guess that's one other thing I should add, is that virtual parties are actually pretty fun. They sound sort of not awesome, but they can be a great time. We did one at Burning Man. It went for 7 hours, and it was, like, definitely one of the best parties I think most people agreed I've ever experienced. So,
hey, we're entering a new age where we're all discovering that we literally can all be connected in any time, space, reality. So
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Just
So,
got to figure out how to do hugs through the computer. But
yeah.
we'll find a way.
So September 19th,
Yes.
3 o'clock, ddp.com, theddp.com, and we will see you there. Thank you, Gary.
Yes. And ideally, show up early to get set up.